bidding you all a wonderful afternoon. It is with great pleasure that I welcome all the dignitaries and distinguished guests, along with our panelists, Mr. Rajendra Tyagaraja, Mr. Chandimu Rodrigo, and Mr. Ganakamara Singha, present here today virtually at the Crescent Sri Lanka Budget Review 2022. Crescent Sri Lanka, established in 1932, is one of the reputed firms of chartered accountants in Sri Lanka. As a member firm of Crescent International Limited and a correspondent firm of Grant Thornton International Limited, Crescent Sri Lanka has provided access to standard advice and competitive services on assurance, advisory, tax, and outsourcing under the cutting-edge technology on both the local and international stage. Providing mentorship on the challenges and opportunities of their clients' future while combining expertise with empathy, Crescent Sri Lanka has managed to break through the traditional framework of an accountant role. All of this was made possible through the act of setting an aim to continuously deliver their services in accordance with local and international platform. Having to face an unexpected pandemic since the beginning of last year created a challenging atmosphere for all industries globally. But with a constructive confidence that 2022 might be the year of resilience, Crescent Sri Lanka, having a proud history of over 85 years, is now recovering and adjusting to the new normal. Thus, conquering all the obstacles and adapting to the cutting-edge technology, we are here today to provide you a deep dive analysis of the Annual Budget 2022 via Zoom, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live across the Crescent Sri Lanka pages. Chaos is inevitable, and order shall be brought forward from the chaos only by those with a strong willpower and a clear goal. With the unexpected rollover of events that are turning the tides of our country, 2022, the coming year, holds a treasure trove of opportunities for organizations to implement new strategic approaches to perform to their maximum capability. These ideas will be explored thoroughly in today's session in varying perspectives from esteemed panelists in an informative panel discussion and an illustrious budget presentation. The secret of getting ahead is getting started, is a well-known quote by the famous American writer Mark Twain. So, to get started with today's lineup, this convivial call-up is to the managing partner of Crescent Sri Lanka, Mr. S. Rajanathan, to welcome the gathering on board.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is with great pleasure I warmly welcome all of you to this webinar organized by Crescent Sri Lanka on the budget for 2022 presented in Parliament last Friday. I wish to emphasize that while the budget was being presented, we presented the highlights via social media, followed up by detailed brochure the next morning. Many proposals were announced in the budget, of which two included new taxes, one social security contribution and the other surcharge on income tax. I will leave it to our presenter and the panelists to discuss this and share their views. I hope this webinar will give you an opportunity to understand the proposals and its implications and also to clear whatever doubts you will have. Without delaying further, I will now hand over to our comparer Vihanga to take this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Rajanathan, for the warm welcome. In conjunction with the topic of today's webinar, a budget is an essential component in understanding the financial structure of a company. However, properly articulating a budget is an art itself, and our next speaker has accumulated experience throughout his career. He, being a fellow member of CA Sri Lanka since 1995, specializes in taxation, costing, and advisory services. As a fact to highlight, he was one of the 3 members of CA Sri Lanka who got selected to mark the annual reports of the listed companies within the South Asian Federation of Accountants, known as the SAFA region, in Nepal in October 2009. Let me now welcome on board Mr. Kapilatu Korela, the partner, head of tax and advisory, Crescent Sri Lanka, to present the budget overview.
Thanks, Vihanga. Now, budget was presented to the Parliament last Friday, and from that day onwards, a lot of views have been expressed on the budget. So we'll try to analyze the budget proposals by taking one by one. Yes, first we'll go on key tax proposals introduced through the budget. The first one, the surcharge tax. It's proposed to impose a surcharge tax at the rate of 25% on the individuals and companies' taxable income, which exceeds 200 million for the year of assessment 2020-21. This is proposed as a one-time tax charge to the taxpayers. If you look at this proposal, it reminds me the previous super gains tax, which was introduced in the year 2015-16, which is very similar to the nature of the super gain tax. But there are some key differences as well. At that time, the super gain tax was introduced on the accounting, the cutoff point was decided based on the accounting profit. But here it clearly says it's the taxable income. But again, the question here is whether it's the taxable income of the individual company, or once it comes to the groups, whether it's the group companies. It's my guess that it will be the taxable income of the individual companies rather than the group taxable income. Then the next question comes from that is, if it is on the individual companies, there is a possibility of double taxation. For example, the operating companies in the groups, if the taxable income exceeds 200 million, they will be liable to this 25% surcharge tax. In the same way, once that profit is transferred to the holding company, then again the dividends are now liable to tax because it forms part of the taxable income of the holding company. As a result, there is a possibility even the holding company becoming liable to this surcharge tax. Practically, it will result in a double taxation. The next question that comes to my mind is whether this will be allowed as a deduction in the income tax computation of the year, the subsequent year. Here again, my guess is it will not be allowed because already the allowable taxes are specifically defined in the law. Since this is a new tax, unless the law is changed to that effect, the surcharge tax will not be allowed as a deduction in the subsequent year. The next important question is, what is the due date of this tax? It is not mentioned in the budget proposals. So I hope most probably it will be charged before end of 31st March 2022. These are my initial thoughts on this surcharge tax. So it's introduced as a one-time tax charge. So I hope it will continue the same way without taking it to the next year. Then the next tax introduced through the budget proposals is the Social Security Contribution. We'll call it SSC. So this SSC is at 3% on the annual liable turnover, which exceeds 120 million Sri Lankan rupees. Here again, we can see there is a little bit of a disparity between the what is stated in the Parliament and what is given in the technical notes. according to what is announced in the parliament, it is only 2.5%, whereas the technical note says it is 3%. I think this has to be clarified by the authorities on this matter. The next question arising from here is, by looking at the targeted revenue from this particular social security contribution, it's about 140 billion rupees. So it is very clear. So there will not be any input tax on this SSC. So therefore there will be a cascading effect because of this SSC. The next question is whether this tax can be passed on to the consumer. So like NBT, I hope it will be passed on to the next consumer. Then the next question is, if it is passed on to the consumer, whether it will be allowed as a deduction in the computation of the consumers when they actually acquire goods and services. Here again, since it's not specifically mentioned, there is a possibility of even disallowing this social SSC as an expenditure item in the taxpayers' tax computation in the following year. Then the most important thing here is, what is this annual liable turnover? Right? It has to be defined. Now the questions arise whether it will include the exports. My guess is exports will not be covered because government is trying its best to promote exports. Whether it will include the exempt businesses, the turnover, that has to be seen. The next one is whether it will include the investment income like interest income, dividend income and rent income. My guess is these items will not be included in the annual liable turnover. Then the next proposal is special GST. In fact, this proposal has been presented not in this budget, in the previous budget, year 2021. So special GST to be introduced covering following 5 key industries: telecommunication, motor vehicle, cigarettes, liquor, betting and gaming. But according to the very recent reaction by the Minister of Finance on a question of this special GST, he said he is not aware what is exactly covered under this particular special GST. Right now he doesn't want to disclose that. So there is the possibility of even additional sectors coming up to this, coming under this special GST. Then we look at the key tax proposal regarding the value-added tax. So one key proposal is the VAT on financial services has been increased from current 15% to 18%. So this will be directly applicable to the bank and financial institutions. This is effective from 1st January 2022 to 31st December 2022, which is only for 1 year as per the proposals. So I hope it will be continue in that same way. So this will be an additional tax burden to the banks and financial institutions. Then a new tax exemption has been proposed for supply of goods, certain goods to the government hospitals and hospitals. Basically, the medical supply of importation and supply of medical equipment, machinery, apparatus, accessories and parts thereof, and the hospital furniture, drugs and chemicals. And you have to import, and if you are donating it to the government hospitals or the Ministry of Health, this exemption will be available provided you get the recommendation of the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Health. Then we look at the key tax proposals on the excise duty on cigarettes and the liquor. Now, already the Gazette notification has been issued on both increase in the excise duties on cigarettes and the liquor. Then we have a glance through the expected revenue from the new tax proposals. Now, first one, the one-time tax surcharge, the government is expecting 100 billion out of this one-time tax surcharge. It was during the budget presentation, it was revealed only 62 companies will be captured under this heading. But I have my doubts about that. The number of companies may be much more than 62. Then VAT on financial services, that is the additional revenue the government is targeting, 14 billion. Then you will see the biggest amount is coming from social security contribution, which is 140 billion. Then tax on cigarettes, additional revenue 28 billion, excise tax 25 billion, and on motor vehicles there are some proposals on that additional 4 billion. Right. Then we will move on to key tax proposals, the administrative provisions. There are several administrative provisions. The first proposal is to have established a consolidated unit at the Department of Inland Revenue to strengthen the revenue collection at the large taxpayers unit, you call it LTU, and upper corporate unit at the department. So this is again the I believe this is again the application of the 80-20 principle. The government is going to concentrate their attention on the large taxpayers, right, which may be contributing to 80% of the government revenue, even though the number may be only 20%. So therefore, I think government is going to apply this management rule in streamlining these two units. Then there is a emphasis on the digitalization of the Inland Revenue Department, then the customs, as well as the excise department. Right? There are specific proposals are there to digitalize. And once this digitalization exercise is completed, streamlined, it will enable the submission of digital invoices and documents as valid documents in tax filing with proper verification system in place. Then finally, it has been proposed to simplify the process of obtaining liquor license. Now, right now, the obtaining liquor license is a bit of a cumbersome process. It is proposed to streamline the process, simplify the process. Then we'll have a look at the non-tax revenue proposals. Now, it has been proposed to levy certain fees in respect of vehicles. There are 4 kinds of proposals are there. First one is levying a fee on the vehicles which undergo motor traffic accident and allowing the insurer to reimburse the fee from the insurance. So I think here again, when an accident happens and the insurance company pays the claim, right, at that point the insurance company will have to recover this special fee from the insurance policy holder. So the question arises how this fee is going to be computed, whether it is based on the value of the compensation or insurance claim, or whether it's a flat fee. So what about the third-party vehicle insurances, right? So these questions to be clarified. Then there's a second proposal, levying a fee for modernization, modification and upgrading of vehicles. Now we can see a lot of vehicles on the road which have been modernized or modified. So government is proposing to levying a fee on that. The amount is not yet quantified. Then imposing a penalty during the period of amnesty in respect of legalization of all unauthorized roadworthy motor vehicles and motorcycles. I think the government has identified there are significant number of unauthorized roadworthy motor vehicles and motorcycles. So there is an amnesty period. During that period, if these vehicles are properly registered, so there will be a penalty fee imposing on that, and after that it will be considered as a legally imported vehicle into the country. The fourth proposal under the motor vehicles, release all the vehicles stationed at the Sri Lanka customs because of non-payment of tax or other reasons after charging relevant taxes and fines. So those are the key proposals put forward with regard to the motor vehicles. Now again, the government has proposed to issue a license conducting leisure related activities in special premises which are developed as special zones. So they are hoping to develop special zones to carry out leisure activities, and the license fee will be charged from those who are operating in those areas. Further, Telecommunication Regulatory Commission will issue the licenses by issuing auctions. Now this may be relating to the fixed telephone operators, mobile operators, internet service providers and satellite broadcasting operations. right? Basically, those are the revenue proposals. Then we look at some other important proposals, because this time the government has kept its promise that they don't want to have ad hoc changes into the taxes. So therefore, they in difficult circumstances, they have not changed any of other income tax or VAT related aspects other than implementing these two new taxes. So therefore, we'll have a look at other important proposals. The first proposal, now I'm not going to discuss here each and every proposal. So we have handpicked few proposals which we think which are important. First one is budget Samurdhi banks to be converted as one-stop shops that provide all services and facilities for development of micro and small enterprises. Now, financing this micro and small enterprises is a continuous issue. So therefore, they are trying to rectify this issue by converting Samurdhi banks to as a one-stop shop. Then a single window system will be established to facilitate import-export process by integrating all institutions that work with Sri Lanka customs. This is again, I believe, a request from the private sector, because there are so many obstacles when you try to export and import goods. So to improve that, this particular proposal has been put forward. Then a grading system for exporters to be introduced and free custom facilities to be provided to those with higher gradings. The next proposal, the custom duties and cess rates together with licensing mechanism for imports to be simplified. Then there is a considerable amount of discussion on the digitalization of the revenue administration. So here it says the tax law to be amended in relation to the use of digital identification numbers and other legal requirements. Then three-wheeler regulatory authority to be established to regulate the three-wheeler industry. The next proposal, which is highly debated nowadays, a contributory pension scheme for senior citizens who do not currently receive pensions to be established. So it was during the budget presentation, it was told to the parliament that this is a contributory pension scheme, but it's not mandatory. The business registration fees not to be charged in year 2022 for new startups. As an encouragement to the new startups, no business registration fees in the year 2022. The next proposal, the Finance Act to be amended to simplify complex processes adopted by Board of Investment, Department of Foreign Exchange and Export Development Board in relation to new business registrations. I think all these steps are steps taken towards improving your doing business index in the country. A new program to provide necessary knowledge to encourage flower growers and to promote export-oriented production to be implemented. The local production of fabrics required for apparel industry to be started. Now here again, this is also a very important proposal. Right now, even though we are exporting about 5 billion worth of US dollars as garments, most of the fabrics are imported. So the government is planning to start local production of fabrics. They have identified certain areas for that, which will be given later. A rapid program to promote local handloom and batik production industry to be implemented with the aim of generating USD 1 billion in the year 2025. Then gem and jewelry authority industry to be promoted and the country to be promoted as a hub for gem and jewelry. So investment in rubber related finished products to be promoted and restriction will be imposed on rubber related imports. So right now there is a considerable amount of rubber related imports happening. So they are planning to impose the restrictions on the rubber related imports. This might have an adverse impact on some of the industries, because the amount of rubber available in the country right now is not sufficient for the local industries. Promote local manufacture of equipment and appliances required for generation of renewable energy. Right now, the government has put a lot of attention on promoting the renewable energy, but we find most of these equipment are imported. So this results in a lot of foreign currency going out. So they are hoping to promote the manufacture of equipment and appliances in this industry. Wellness tourism, event tourism, destination tourism and homestays to be promoted. As a promotion of the tourism industry, they have identified new areas. New program to establish new Ayurveda treatment centers and to promote traditional indigenous medicine and natural treatment methods to be formulated. All these are proposals for promotion of the tourism industry. The next one, the capacity of the organic fertilizer production for the targeted cultivations to be expanded. Right now, this is a hotly debated issue, the conversion into the organic fertilizer from the chemical fertilizer. So a lot of people feel that government has done this without having adequate plan. So it seems they are trying to further give incentives in this area to increase the capacity of the organic fertilizer production. Diversified agricultural products and value-added agricultural products to be promoted to generate foreign income. Now, this is again one of the biggest issues in our agriculture sector. A lot of agricultural products are exported as raw material and rather than value-added products. With a view to make the Sri Lanka as the Asia's naval hub, free ports to be established and strict rules in relation to registration of ships to be simplified. So government is trying to promote the country as a naval hub by simplifying the registration rules of the ships. The next proposal, the 2 new oil refineries focused on exports are planned to be established in Hambantota and Trincomalee. Right? The 3 new techno parks are proposed to be commenced in Habarana, Nuwara and Kandy. A special finance bill to be introduced to ensure safety of local and foreign exporters. Required lands and tax concessions to be provided for investors to establish an international school and hospital in every district. The government is planning to take international schools and hospitals to each district with the help of the private sector. For that purpose, we are willing to provide the lands and tax concessions, but tax concessions are not specified. Most probably it will be coming under the existing Inland Revenue Act. Private public partnerships to be promoted to implement mixed development projects. Now, PPPs are the buzzword nowadays. Rather than privatization, a lot of governments, they resort to PPPs to attract the private sector involvement into the development projects. The procurement process of the public sector to be modernized through decentralization and e-procurement technology. So I think if this proposal is properly implemented, a lot of allegations regarding the malpractices in the government procurement process can be eliminated. Then investment zones for new products. As I explained earlier, the government has identified a lot of areas for new investment zones. Now, for example, organic agricultural production, all agricultural districts. Then pharmaceutical production, they were specifically identified Oyamaduwa, Millenia and Arugambukka. Production of raw materials for textile and apparel industry, they have identified Eraur, Monragala, Puttalam and Kilnochi. Export-based agro-processing zones, they have identified Mattala, LPTA, Hambantota and Jaffna. Livestock production zones, they have identified Nawalapitiya, Varipola and Polonnaruwa. Fisheries and agriculture development zones through private investment, Puttalam, Mana, Hambantota, Jaffna and Kilnochi. Production of chemicals, Paranthan, Pulmude and Eppavala. Then investment zones for production of electric and electronic appliances and IT-based products, Enegama, Suryawava, Kundasale and Homagama. Manufacturing sports equipment, Hambantota and Suryawava. Steel and heavy metal industry, Mirijavila. So these are the investment zones identified by the government for implementation. The development of renewable energy. So under this is also one of the main thrust area of the government. The investment opportunities in the energy sector have been opened for private sector. Already it is open for the private sector. In order to fulfill 70% of the aggregate electricity demand through renewable energy by year 2030, it is proposed to expedite such investment in 2022. Now there is a lot of emphasis on the hydropower, new solar power projects and the wind power projects on this area. Proposed to allocate additional 500 million for the facilitation of encouraging private investment in the renewable energy sector. Then providing relief for those affected by COVID-19 pandemic. There are some proposals on that. First proposal, the proposed to allocate additional 500 million in addition to the already provided allocation to provide relief to micro, small and medium scale businessmen representing all sectors that were directly affected by the actions resorted by the government to control the COVID-19 pandemic. Then relief for private bus owners who lost income. So proposed to allocate another 1,500 million for that purpose. Then proposed to allocate 500 million to facilitate and motivate arts, entertainment and weddings and event management sectors. But all these sectors have been badly affected by the pandemic. So these are the allocations for those sectors. The establishment of a mini supermarket chain for women entrepreneurs. Now government has identified there are about 15,000 villages in the country. They want to have a woman entrepreneur from each country to start their own business. For that purpose, 15,000 million is allocated for that particular program for them to start mini supermarket network at the Grama Seva Nirdhari division level. Then the next one is the client-centric public service to the digitization. A further 500 million in addition to the allocation of 3,500 million will be provided for this purpose for the digitization of the public service. Then leisure license fees is proposed to issue a license under goods and services tax for designated areas to be developed as special zones for leisure activities. I think government is going to identify special areas for the purpose of development of leisure activities, and then the license will be issued to operate in those areas, those who are interested in. This may be the areas on even water sports, things like that. This will be implemented. Thank you. I hope a lot of budget proposals have been put forward in this country. The most important thing right now is implementation of this proposal. So we will see whether these proposals are implemented properly in the times to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Athukorala, for the impressive presentation of the budget. Many amendments from the previous budget, yet leaving many to be clarified. With that, we have arrived at the pinnacle of today's session, the panel discussion. Let me now introduce our panel members before we proceed. Having our first panelist, Mr. Rajendra Tyagaraja. Mr. Tyagaraja is a senior visiting fellow of the Pathfinder Foundation, Sri Lanka, a leading policy think tank. His expertise in sectors of banking and finance is outshined by the 37 years of his service both locally and overseas, which captures 16 years in the capacity as the CEO of 3 Sri Lankan commercial banks with deep connectivity to the SME sector. During the period 2017 to 2019, he held the position of Chairman of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce Board. Currently, he serves as an independent non-executive director in several boards of public listed and private companies while chairing the National Agenda Committee for Entrepreneurship. His recent contribution as project lead for the report on connecting micro and SME sectors to contribute towards economic prosperity in a digital savvy post-COVID-19 Sri Lanka is available at Facebook. Mr. Rajendra Tyagaraja, it is with great honor we welcome you on board.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Thank you for joining us. Yes, let me proceed with the other panelists and then we can move on for the panel discussion. Mr. Chandamu Rodrigo, our next panel member of the session. Mr. Chandima completed his secondary education at Royal College Colombo and proceeded to Faculty of Law, University of Colombo, where he obtained his degree in law. He is also a fellow member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, UK. Mr. Chandima has over 30 years of post-qualifying experience in Sri Lanka and overseas, covering most of the business sectors from finance industry to motor dealerships, farming and property, apparel, manufacturing, airlines and telecommunication. Warmly welcoming to the session a Group Director of the Capital Maharaja Group, Mr. Chandima Rodrigo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for joining us. Speaking of our last panelist, Mr. Ganak Amar Singha, a business administration graduate of University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, has contributed as an independent director of Putlam Salt Limited from 2010 to 2019 and Saileys Limited from February to August in 2013. Mr. Amar Singha, presently being the Senior Director of Raigam Group of Companies, is a fellow member of many reputed institutions, namely the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, Institute of Certified Management Accountants of Sri Lanka, and Association of Accounting Technicians of Sri Lanka. It is with much pride we call Mr. Ganak Amar Singha up for our panel discussion.
Thank you.
Without any further ado, I shall now introduce the moderator of the discussion, Ms. Mekhala Awanti. Ms. Awanti, who is a participant of the very first batch of MBA in taxation at the Postgraduate Institute of Management of University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, has experience in the field of taxation over 10 years at leading multinational audit assurance and tax consultancy firms in Sri Lanka. Currently, Ms. Awanti is a manager, taxation in Crescent, Sri Lanka, and also a fellow member of the Institute of Taxation of Sri Lanka. Having introduced our eminent panelists, I suppose it's the high time to commence our panel discussion. Thus, to take over the session, this congenial invitation is to you, Ms. Awanti.
Thank you, Vihanga. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We warmly welcome you to the Budget Forum of Crescent Sri Lanka 2022. Would this 76th national budget become a pathfinder to Sri Lankan economy towards the development? I leave the question with our audience and let's move on to our eminent panelists here with us today. My first question goes to Mr. R. Tyagaraja. Mr. Tyagaraja is the veteran ex-banker. Sir, can you please provide us some synopsis on the overall budget at macro level? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mekhala. My overall perspective is this budget aspires to bring down a very important deficit, which is the overall current deficit, which stands just over 11% of GDP, to around 8.8%, which I think is a good aspiration. But if we really examine three components of that, first is revenue. If you look at revenue, so a key component of this, we are relying on almost a 2.7% increase in the tax to GDP contribution from the current 8%, which I think is a very commendable aspiration. But my only comment to that is, for perhaps more than a decade, maybe more than that, we have had such aspirations, but we have consistently fallen short of the actual implementation and collection of this revenue. So it doesn't matter on whether it's on personal tax or corporate tax or one different type, the collectability and the administration is very important. This is something we would have to know. The second component of this deficit comes from expenditure. So if you look at the expenditure, I believe that this year's total expenditure shows a modest reduction from last year. It's approximately a 6% reduction when you compare the budget fiscal allocation. While there is a reduction in the overall expenditure, my initial comment is whether there is a lopsidedness in the type of allocation of these expenditure to the different sectors. For example, I fully agree that defense is a very important element in national security. But it's been almost 12 years since we finished that conflict. But today we still chose to allocate almost 7% of this budget of GDP towards the expenditure relating to defense, local administration and provincial council. On one side, 7%. Then on the other side, we look at education. The allocation is a mere 1%. And then if you look at the other most important sector in terms of building people is good quality healthcare. The allocation is approximately 1.6%. So when we look at the 1.6 and 1, we have approximately around 2.5% of GDP allocated to future-proofing our citizens and workforce, but we have almost three times that going towards this local government, provincial council, administration and defense. So I'm not questioning the allocation of defense, but I'm questioning the relevance in terms of overall allocation. Then we look at the overall financing of this deficit. It appears similar to last year. Almost 98% of the deficit is to be financed with domestic financing sources. So we are not going to overseas, but we can domestic. And after domestic financing, approximately 1.39 trillion rupees is to be financed by what we call non-bank borrowings, which I presume will be mainly through government treasury bills, bonds, etc. Now, there are two ways of raising this money, from my simple understanding. One is by going through the captive sources as well as people like you and me and try to attract us to reallocate some of our savings from other sources of savings into treasury bills and bonds. Now, to do that, naturally, there has to be an appeal. And my question is, will that result in a gradual increase in interest rates? That's the first question we have. Of course, the second choice of raising such money is by printing money. If we do decide to print money, then we are definitely going to have a challenge regarding inflation. Then the balance component, which is almost just over 500 billion rupees, is to be financed from bank sources, which means again, what does that mean? You're going to have to compete for private savings to mobilize that money from banks. Does that mean that interest rates will again gradually increase? Time will tell. So that's an issue to be mindful of. If you look at the more positive, a couple of things I would like to mention. Overall, it was pleasing to note that there were no significant new tax incentives to encourage investment and foreign direct investment into the country. In a way, I'm happy that we are doing that because I think the country has already given enough incentives for investment. Where we seem to be falling short is not on incentives and tax breaks. We need to improve our positioning in the ease of doing index globally because we slipped from a 65th position in 2013 down to 85th position in 2020. So we need to address some of the critical components of what makes up the ease of doing indicator and seeing what are those things, where has the investment got to be channeled to enable those indicators to improve our ease of doing indication. Because that's what serious investors look at. That's the comment to bear in mind. The other positive thing I noticed is in this budget, they made an announcement regarding the green economy, which also there was mentions about green bonds. which is again a capital market instrument or a financing instrument, either at the micro company level or at a national level. And I think that is the timing is very appropriate because Sri Lanka is currently in the moment in the stages of drafting its own sustainability development roadmap, which is a project jointly done between the UNDP on one side and the Sustainability Development Council of Sri Lanka on the other side. I think the target is to get that roadmap going by first quarter next year. So this particular timing of this announcement is right because the SDG roadmap can now start to look at 3 or 4 of the key SDG goals which are relevant to these bonds and seeing how they can sharpen their attention. So that's a positive thing. But overall, while all these positive things and some concerns are mentioned, the disappointment personally for me is the fact that this budget, in terms of announcements or the statement itself, did not address the burning problem which you and I are currently facing in Sri Lanka. That is the looming forex crisis, the current shortage, and what has put out as a part of this budget statement. And that is absolutely important because as an island nation, we are an island. We have to depend on imports and exports. And for that, at the moment, as of September, for the 9 months, already we have shown almost a $6 billion trade deficit. Imports are more than exports. We have currently a challenge in trying to manage this foreign exchange issue. And if that is not addressed, all the good other aspirations and announcements will be secondary because the critical element as for an island to facilitate investment and trade is to have an enabling environment to facilitate that import and export, which is foreign exchange. So that particular issue has not been addressed adequately in my view. With those comments, I will rest my case and let the other 2 panelists also make their comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tyagaraja. I would like to pose one more question to you, sir, especially on this banking sector. The banking and financial services sector are the most affected in the country in terms of the taxation, because there are so many taxes imposed currently, and with the budget proposals also, the VAT on financial services the rate has been increased to 15% to 18%. So would you like to have some comments on this area as well?
Yes. So this is not the first time this sector has been, as we say, milked by the government. I think from time to time when I was actively involved in bank leadership, I think I saw at least 2 instances where we went through this. So it's not the first time. On the positive side, my question is when these banks continuously announce large profits every quarter, even this morning we see in the papers, surging in profits. So when this surge is announced and we keep on talking about it, naturally we become a target for people when there is a need to mobilize money. Right? My comment would have been, it would have been more effective for some of these banks to try and articulate and showcase the type of employment they have generated through their activities than only focusing on the profitability. So that was on one side. But on the other side, in fairness, it is most of these banks, if you read the 2 state banks, the way which are single shareholder owned, the money anyhow goes to the treasury. If you look at the private sector banks, they are mainly private, institutional and private individual shareholder finance. And I think this particular thing definitely will have an impact on the ability of these companies, the sustainability in generating and demonstrating the dividend payout ratio. Now, when that happens, naturally, the investor sentiment and the demand for these shares, which happen to be probably one of the key elements in the Colombo Stock Exchange classification, also becomes a question mark. Then also, I think positively over the last maybe decade or more, we have seen a number of these listed banks being successfully able to mobilize a good degree of foreign ownership, individual and institutional ownership as part of the overall shareholder base. So when this happens, there are two things which can happen. One is the challenge to some of those shareholders in justifying their returns. And already there is an issue with the type of foreign exchange challenge we are having in repatriating dividends. So this is a multi-pronged effect on the banking system which we have to manage. And while this is a profit-making segment, which is a part of those 62 or whatever companies which they want to look at the super tax as well. On the flip side, I would say the downside of that is that amount of profit, if it went back into the retained earnings of those banks, typically these banks have the capacity to leverage anything beyond 10 times of that capital, that amount of profit, back into the system in terms of distributing capital into the system. So supporting SMEs, supporting MSMEs, supporting in corporate Sri Lanka, the capacity, in my opinion, would have been far greater if we left that amount of profit in the hands of those banks rather than try to take that money and try to deploy that as a resource to the government. Because anyhow, I think from time to time we have seen challenges in the government's ability in trying to allocate these resources. In my opinion, it would have been better if they allowed the private sector to manage. I hope that gives some perspective to your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tyagaraja, for the resourceful insights. Let's now move on to our next panelist, Mr. Chandima Rodrigo, the Group Director of Capital Maharaja Organization Limited. Sir, very welcome you. We would like to know your overall view on the key tax proposals announced at this budget 2022.
Thank you very much. But when you ask about the key tax proposals, I'm really wondering, this is after approximately 35 years of my career. First year, I did not circulate a document among my accountants because there was very limited tax proposals. One way, it's very welcome because there has to be a consistency. Amendment to Inland Revenue Act done over and over again creates a lot of inconsistency. I didn't find a single budget proposal that would bring an amendment to Inland Revenue Act. And then there was this VAT change and the exemptions, which should create an amendment. And then we have super gain tax, something similar to super gain tax, and as a non-tax mechanism on the accidents. If you look 6 years back, 2016 budget and 2015 budget, in my opinion, this is a direct cut and paste of those two. And I have a slight different view on how this surcharge tax may be charged. I personally feel it's probable the legal draftman and that person who drafts it may write the PBT. And if he does it, then the consolidated accounts would come into place. Under the new Inland Revenue Act, we had to set up the entire laws. Because of that, it's very difficult for them to, because the idea, in my opinion, when I look at as a person who check mostly tax, when I get a proposal, I see the purpose. Purpose here is to collect as much as money from the people who made money during that period. So a person who makes money, if he had losses, may not come in. So that amount of exceptional, there's a probability because wording on the previous non-budget speech also was more or less the same, but the act came as PBT. But it's all three possibilities are there. But here, as Kapila mentioned, the word is very specifically stated to say tax on taxable income. So taxable income is a terminology. So I respect what Kapila said. And then something that makes me a little unhappy is the amnesty tax. Now we are already who imported unauthorized vehicles. So unauthorized vehicles could be two sets of unauthorized vehicles. One is vehicles that has come in, which is legal to go on the roads, and the vehicles that has come in, which is even illegal to go on the road, which is unauthorized. As per the budget speech, it looks like even the illegal vehicles may be given chance to register. Even otherwise, I think it has to be, in my opinion, personal opinion, whenever you issue an amnesty, you are punishing the person who complied with the law. Continuous amnesties that is coming every 5 years or every 10 years make taxpayers to keep away from taxes because they know after some time you can get into it. Now, even with the vehicles, what we are doing is the same. And 10,000 rupees on the accidents is a very specific point-to-point one in 2016 budget, but the 2016 budget never came to play. That was the budget that was read by Honorable Minister Ravi Karunanayake, but that budget, most of the budget proposals did not come. Yes, that's what I had to say about. And anyway, I expected being into tax, very hard budget for the collection, which Mr. Tyagaraja talks. I will not talk because he knows more about the requirement of the money and how it is needed. But even being in the back office, I felt the government needed more money. So I personally felt the government may go back to the older thresholds and higher rates. If you look at the budget speech, at the very beginning, Finance Minister very specifically says 5 problems, and the first problem is the income disparity has gone in adverse manner. Now, our previous budget, 2001st January declaration, making threshold from 50,000 to practically 350,000 because 250,000 and another 100,000 as the expense relief made many people not to out of the tax bracket. So that I expected at least temporarily that would get corrected, but I didn't see it. But I'm sure the government must be having some policy because I think the previously what they were trying to do was for everybody to have a tax file. So right now, I think the thinking is to reduce the number of tax files, but make the collection more efficient. That's it.
Thank you very much. And I would like to pose another question to you with regard to digital invoice. As proposed in this budget 2022, could you kindly give us some insights on current legislation available on validity of digital invoice, accepting of digital invoice? I think this would be a good proposal. your thoughts?
It is, but it is, I'm always a critique here, but the proposal is extremely limited. If you look at the proposal, it talks about the RANIs on the preamble to the proposal. First few lines are on the RANIs on this section 7, and then the latter part they talk about the digital invoicing. Now, digital documentation is nothing new to us. It came on Act number 19 of 2006, and we were the first in South Asia to sign non-wet signature or digital signature, and then we were the third in Asia to accept these UN norms. So accepting digital documentation, we already have very nice piece of law which came in 2006, substantially amended in 2017. Only very few documents will go without digital signature. But right now, on the practice, if it is linked with RAMIs, and if for the practice, if the people are looking on the databases to see whether other database is having this invoice and disallowing it, you may be knowing your MBA on taxation and a tax practitioner, you must be knowing many corporates. They are withholding tax on previous years is disallowed. Withholding tax by banks is disallowed because the Inland Revenue was unable to find it in RAMIs. But some of the very good Inland Revenue officers kept on writing to banks to get it, but some disallowed. So there seems to be issues related to it. Even when it's come to VAT, if your invoices, if your input invoice is not there, it's disallowed, and the charge comes to you. But it should be other way around. If somebody has withheld money on behalf of the state and not remitted to state, that person should be criminally liable. We should not take the easier, this is my opinion, we should take the easier view of disallowing it on the person who claimed it. But on the other hand, if the person who claimed it has claimed intentionally and knowingly claimed that he was not entitled to claim, or the documentation itself was wrong, or he has created, then he should be criminally liable. So, I mean, this criminal liability, unfortunately, as professionals, we are unhappy. You know what I mean. Last amendment got another amendment because we as professionals we are unhappy. And fortunately, the amendment came further by making the employees criminal liable. It's very good that people know that when they do something, they have to be criminal liable. I think I moved totally out of the topic. So we have very good foundation to accept digital invoices, digital agreements. It's like this. Why these digital things are accepted is whether we accept the digital signature. So now we accept the digital signature. So there is every possibility to do it. And further, it's more welcome. I'm old man. When original GST Act came, we used to bind those invoices and keep it there because it was like money. It was like money that I couldn't put into the bank. So till the audit is over, I had to save it. But now with the digitalization and allowing digital invoices to be taken, we don't have to, the management become that much easy for the accountants and back office people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandimal Rodrigo, for your resourceful inputs on this forum. Let me finally move on to our last panelist, Mr. Ganaka Amarasinghe, the Senior Director of Ragam Group of Companies. Welcome, sir. I would like to pose a specific question on GST. Actually, GST has been introduced in 2021 budget, but however, it has not implemented during 2021. So in this budget, it has announced that it will be effective from 1st of January 2022 onwards. So this would mainly to simplify indirect tax collection from telecommunication industry, motor vehicles, tobacco and liquor, and betting and gaming sectors. What are your ideas on GST to be implemented in future?
Yeah, thank you very much for the great introduction and the opportunity granted to share my thoughts with the audience. Thank you, my good friend Kapila. Focusing on your question, this is not GST, this is special GST. So we have experience in GST from 1996. The same VAT was earlier named as GST, and later on the government changed it to that. So the GST and the VAT have the same meaning. But here the idea is the last year proposal is to introduce a different tax, something different from value-added tax method under special GST targeting on specific business activities. So here it will be a composite tax. So when you take the telecommunication industry and the liquor and tobacco, the industries like this, there are so many taxes into that. So when they introduce this GST, that will be one-off tax against so many taxes applicable to that industry. So similar one already we have, that is a special commodity levy. When you import certain goods in Sri Lanka like sugar, maybe salt and other essential items, instead of 7 taxes, with the custom duty, surcharge, PAL, and VAT, many more things. So there is only one tax, that is the special commodity levy. So the GST, the special GST, also a similar one, will cover many taxes into one. So that is why the government said that is introduced in order to simplify the tax system. Yes, I endorse. So that will simplify because it is going to be one tax instead of many. But there is a bad impact also on that, because on your telecommunication bill or whatever other bill, when you get a value-added tax, being a registered person, we can claim the input tax. But when it comes to the GST, the special GST, we don't know whether it is going to be input credit. I don't think that you can't claim GST against that. So this will be a separate one. So it will give the cascading effect since it cannot be passed on to another person. So we have to be very particular on this wording. It will be the special GST imposed on identified product. And also I heard yesterday the Secretary to the Treasury mentioned at one forum that there will be differential rates on the different products. So it is not going to be the same rate on cigarette, same rate on telecommunication, same rate on. So the government might they are planning to introduce different rates on different products depending on their the contribution to the economy as well as the impact to the society. This telecommunication is something different. Now the telecommunication equipment, the services are obtained by every person in the country. We have, say, 20 million population with 40 million mobile connections. So you can understand how it is spread over the economy. But the cigarettes and when you take liquor is different and the vehicle is different. So therefore there will be differential rate basis on the special GST. So that is my comment on the new GST.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask one more question in relation to this special GST. How do you think the tax administration of special GST collection, because as you mentioned, there will be preferential rates, and how do you think the tax administration on this, especially for the revenue authorities, how would it will impact on them?
I think it is too early to comment on this. We have to wait till the legislation come out, because already we don't know whether it is charged or whether it is something you can pass on to another person, and what basis it is going to be introduced. That's only a concept at the moment, maybe with the legal draftment, but not exposed. So we have to wait and see till the legislation is out.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir, for your resourceful inputs on this forum. Let me now move on to our panel. From our panel discussion, let me now move on to the question and answer session. So let me pick some of the questions that the audience has raised. I think this question would go to Mr. Kapila. Can social security contribution be deducted from corporate tax like ESC?
By looking at the revenue they have targeted from this particular proposal, I don't think it will be allowed as a deduction against the corporate income tax.
Okay. I would like to pose this question to Mr. Tyagaraja. How does this budget proposal impacted to the share market in Sri Lanka?
So the share market is lopsided, or it's tilted towards some of the larger profit-making companies. In particular, I think the super tax will no doubt have a dampening effect on the liquidity some of those companies, or most of those companies, because we have two elements which look at investor sentiment. One is the longer term capital gain, the other one is the actual profits and the payout of dividends. So I think if the latter is going to be challenged as a part of a one-off cash outflow in the next 12 months, we may see some challenges. The second thing which I personally believe, for the better managed companies which are listed in the stock exchange, which profit or thrive through sustainable growth, not just gambling, is actually any indications encouraging ease of doing business. That is something I personally have not seen standing out in this budget. So I feel that there will be, I see it as a lukewarm reaction as opposed to an exciting reaction.
Thank you, Mr. Tyagaraja.
And of course, one needs to also bear in mind when we look at this reaction, there are two elements. One is the domestic participation, and the other one is the foreign participation. And the foreign participation still plays an important role. The sheer fact that we have a foreign exchange challenge at the moment in sending monies out, even through the whatever the equivalent of the CLI accounts, the accounts which facilitate money coming in and going out, the actual delays themselves, I think, is a damping effect which has to be addressed. That's why, as I said earlier, that forex issue has to be first addressed. Do anything else.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to ask from audience, are there any more questions from y'all? There's one more question. I would like to pose it to Mr. Rodrigo. Subsequent to tax bonanza announcing 2019, most of the IRD staff are idling. Why can't the government send them home and save a lot? This question directly came to us from the audience. Further, corruption play a vital role in tax collection. What actions the government can take? IRD staff are most inefficient, as FM said. Public servants are burden to this country.
I would say the corruption is our problem. I think our problem is we keep on blaming these 225 people when the corruption we ourselves do corruption for our easiness. How many people park at the wrong place and not get the parking ticket and give a little money to the parking attendant and go? How many of us give 100 rupees to the garbage collector? And when you look at all these things, and it's very easy for us to have these politicians who take the corruption. I'm not implying in any manner that politicians are not corrupt, but I think we will have to stop the corruption. Question is very good. Reducing the tax files and all that would have reduced the number of amount of work. But we also had to remember last year, like most of us, Inland Revenue also did not even visit the Inland Revenue. So most of the government servants were working from home or were at home. And to add to what you said, I saw the performance report recently coming out, which said that they had pay tax file of 600,000 odd and income tax file of 200,000 odd. You can't have pay files anymore, because if you had pay files, you have to turn it to income tax files immediately. So obviously, Inland Revenue could not do its job, or there's a duplication. And I'm not in favor of this 80-20 rule where you tax only the rich and try to get the most of it, because the compliance has to be there. Otherwise, you miss the real rich. The real taxpayers you have missed. Out of this less than 300,000 taxpayers, most of them are average people, not the super rich. So if we also stop the corruption, I think as accountants, as practitioners, if we should not take the shortcut. If anybody offers you corruption, say you don't want to do it, you fight the correct way, and know your rights, and let's fight it as professionals. And then because we will not be able to stop somebody else's corruption, we'll be able to stop our corruption. But thank you very much. It's a very valid question, and it's shocking to see certain amount of corruption, not certain amount, big amount of corruption.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodrigo.
Can I also intervene and give my views on this matter?
Yes, sir.
Now, as a result of increasing the tax threshold from 1.2 million to, as you said correctly, 4.2 million effectively, the number of tax files has definitely come down. On the other hand, now a significant number of employees who were supposed to go under the previous payee system, they didn't have to file a tax return. Now, if their income is more than 4.2 million, they are forced to file a tax return. Right? So by that way, the number of files also have gone up. Right? So we have to see what's the actual impact. As a result of increasing the tax threshold, the number of files came down. On the other hand, a lot of people who especially the private sector, highly paid employees, now they will have to file their own tax return, and as a result, the number of files has gone up. So it may be something anywhere in between. So therefore, I can't think that the number of files handled by the department will come down drastically because of this.
Thank you,
A
sir.
number of files practically came down, went up by 11,000 last year.
I didn't have the figures, you may be correct.
But the thing is, some of the files they have not closed yet. So, but I am expecting that there's a lot of not only PAYE, there were so many final taxes which is stopped. So better compliance should come there.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question. I think I will post this to Mr. Ganakamara Singha. Rubber prices are at higher level in recent years. So restrictions on rubber imports, how will affect to the local rubber industries? Kindly answer this question. Over to you, sir.
Yes, that depends on the usage of rubber. Now, point blank, we can say this will be beneficial to the local rubber growers because we had a good export market for our rubber. Then, so our rubber growers were enjoying sometimes back, not recently, good price because of high demand from the export market. That was beneficial not only to the individual growers, but as a country, we had the foreign exchange on that matter. But now the government has introduced this restriction on the import of rubber. So we'll have to see for what purposes these rubber are imported to Sri Lanka. Maybe sometimes some industries, the manufacture of tire and some other industries, we have to import rubber, specific the raw material. Everything depends on whether this proposal will work or not. Will depend on how we can use our own rubber into that, right? So we'll have to. It has very technical question. To what extent our indigenous rubber can be used for those industries. In my belief, if we restrict the import of rubber because of this foreign exchange crisis or something, that can affect some international brands that is manufactured in Sri Lanka using imported rubber. So there should be a balance. So it's good thing that if our indigenous rubber can be used in those high-tech industries, the manufacture of international tire brands. There are companies in Sri Lanka, international products that will be beneficial to the local industry. And with that, I just like to make a note on this budget, as Mr. Rodrigo mentioned, from the business, as businessmen, we expected very tough tax proposals in order to raise the government revenue. Instead of printing money, the government has to raise their revenue. And on the other hand, we expected the immediate solution to this burning foreign exchange issue. Now, as Mr. Tyagaraja mentioned, also both of these not happened. So there were no big impact on the ordinary business taxes. Like, so this introduction of the surcharge and the other taxes will affect the businesses with higher revenue, but the SME sector is not affected. So therefore, we can see this budget proposals are brought under a normal economic situation, and so we welcome the no tax changes every year as promised when they introduce the new Inland Revenue Act also, but there are drastic changes introduced in last year on 1st January 2020. But we welcome that consistency, but at the same time, we are concerned about the economy as well. So I like to add that comment also to this budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope that there are no more questions from our audience. I would like to thank all the panelists today here with us. Thank you very much, everyone. And I hope that the audience would find the discussion resourceful. Over to you, Vihangi.
Thank you, Ms. Avanti. Our heartiest gratitude for our moderator, Ms. Avanti, for guiding us through the panel discussion and figuring out clarifications with the combined knowledge of our esteemed panelists. With that, the thought-provoking and informative sessions of Crescent Sri Lanka Budget Review 2022 has come to fruition. As I believe, we all gained a deep insight on the budget proposal for the year 2022. Everyone's wish for the year ahead is nothing else but to be able to stand up straight and drive back in for the competition, with the hope that the new budget proposal brings positive inputs for every sector. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me express a hearty thankfulness for joining us today, and with the hope of keeping in touch with you all again let me officially wind up today's proceedings. I am Vihanga Gunadasa, the host of the day, signing off. Wishing you all a brilliant day ahead. Stay safe and thank you.